must remember this. A kiss is still a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh.
Hello, I'm Samantha and welcome to my channel. With wool in short supply during the 1930s and World War II, every knitted garment told a story of resilience, creativity and make-do spirit. Thank you for joining me to explore knitwear trends of the 1930s and 1940s and to see how scarcity shaped fashion and sparked ingenuity. The Great Depression of the 1930s sparked a need for women to be resourceful. But by the 1940s, wool rationing as part of the war effort made things even more challenging. But women of the era found clever ways to stay stylish by using their creativity and knitting skills. Because after all, looking stylish was positively patriotic because it boosted morale. In the 1930s, knitwear often featured intricate and tricky stitchwork. Designs were romantic, reflecting the era's focus on femininity and elegance, often influenced by the glamour of Hollywood. Think of those puffed sleeves. Pastels like soft powder blues, pinks, silvery greys, and creamy whites were popular, echoing the light, airy feel of the decade. This jumper, knitted for me by my mother, is a classic 1930s jumper with those puffed sleeves, very apparently intricate stitchwork, and in its soft muted colour.
You must remember this. A kiss is still a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by.
After war was declared in 1939, a shift occurred. The intricate knits of the 30s gave way to simpler, more functional designs, a reflection of both wartime focus on practicality and changing roles for women. The 1940s saw more practicality in sleeve design. While fitted sleeves remained popular, the romantic puffed sleeves of the 30s were replaced by slightly padded and exaggerated shoulders. This added structure and a more assertive look as women entered the workplace. Shorter sleeves were popular through both decades to save on wool. Sleeveless styles and waistcoats were also popular, like my stripy Achillea t-shirt.
He was a famous man on Main Street in every town across the state. And when the drummer played that downbeat, well, they would dance the night away. They would jitter, swing, and lindy, and they would yell and...
Jumpers often finished near the natural waistline, also to save on wool, and also to emphasise a feminine silhouette. Boleros were popular through the 30s, 40s and into the 50s. They were economic on wool and were very versatile to wear. In the 40s there was the preference for earthy, sensible colours that would go with everything, like the dark mustard yellow that my bolero here is knitted in. Despite the scarcity of wool, ingenuity still went into creating pretty stitchwork and interesting necklines. As you can see on my short-sleeved powder blue top, knitted by Linda of Knitting for Victory.
In every town across the state. And when the drummer played that downbeat, well, they would dance the night away. They would jitter, swing, and lindy, and they would yell and scream for more. So when they tried to close the dance hall...
During the war, women were stepping into new roles in the workforce, often taking on jobs that were once considered male occupations, and they needed functional clothes that were more assertive in style. than those flowing romantic lines of the 30s. The padded shoulders in 1940s knitwear were often inspired by military styles. They emphasised strength and practicality, contrast the delicate feminine silhouette of the previous decade. The colours also shifted, becoming darker with more muted tones. Olive greens, deep blues, earthy browns and mustard yellows all became popular as they were practical. And we can see the look in these two jumpers knitted from vintage inspired patterns by my mother again.
The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo, they still say, I love you. On that you can rely. No matter what the future brings, as time goes by. Moonlight and love songs, never out of date. Hearts full of passion, jealousy and hate. Woman needs man, and man must have his mate, that no one can.
And of course, stripes were very popular in the wartime era because you could use leftover wool or a different colour of wool if you'd run out of a particular colour. Despite the restrictions on wool, knitters were incredibly resourceful. Wool shortages and rationing didn't mean that creativity had to stop. In fact, women became even more creative with their designs. In the United Kingdom, the Make Do and Mend movement encouraged women to unravel no longer useful old jumpers, blankets and other woolen items, to recycle the wool and create new garments. This resourcefulness extended to knitwear patterns as well. As wool rationing became stricter, women would often end up with two different colours of wool for the same project, inspiring them to creatively colour block or create multicoloured designs. Patterns were adapted to accommodate this, with many knitwear designs incorporating two-tone schemes or other creative designs such as stripes, chevrons, and geometric motifs to make use of different colours of wool. One of my favourite motifs at the time, highlighted by Linda, the Queen of Vintage Knitting for Victory, is the Scotty dog motif. Was the Scotty dog, teeny tangent, was a very popular breed at the time, now apparently very rare. My friend Elizabeth Jones recounts a sleeveless pullover knitted for her dad by his aunt, which had a blue front and a green back. The problem being that by the time women received more rationing coupons, a wool colour might have run out. Her dad was just told, as a child, on no account to take his jacket off. Knitting pattern companies also embraced the challenge, producing patterns like the economy jumper, which was made in odd shades of wool to help women use up every oddment of wool in every colour they had left. Fair Isle knitting, known for its multiple colours used in geometric patterns, was popular in the 1930s and 40s, especially in the United Kingdom, where it was traditional. War effort led to a preference for handmade, practical and durable clothing, and Fair Isle knitting was a beloved and enduring style through the 1930s and 40s, celebrated for its intricate patterns and traditional significance. Women used their knitting skills to add little touches of joy to their wardrobes, whether it was through bright colour accents, interesting stitch patterns or striking details. Adding embroidery to knitwear was popular, as I'm doing here to the latest knit from my mum.
You come home, and if you ever
Tyrolean knitwear from the Tyrol region in Austria was popular at this time too. The garments often featured a snug fit with decorative elements such as embroidery, braiding, or pattern stitches along edges and seams. My mum and I were inspired by this book by Linda of Knitting for Victory to create a version of the cardigan seen on the cover. You can see that I'm wearing it now, but let's have a closer look at it.
There'll always be an England while there's a country lane. Wherever there's a cottage small beside a field of grain, there'll always be an England while there's a busy street. Wherever there's a turning wheel, a million marching feet. Red, white, and blue, what does it mean to you? Surely you're proud, shout it aloud, Britain's away. Freedom remains, these are the chains nothing can break. There'll always be an England, and England shall be free. If England means as much to you as
My mum spun the wool and knitted the cardigan. I embroidered all the flowers using wool left over from tapestry kits. I also made traditional Dorset buttons for the cardigan, picking out the different flower colours in running stitch around each button. Some iconic designs emerged in the 40s. The rainbow or bunny ear jumper, with its playful bunny ear motif and colour-blocked stripes, was often worn by Hollywood starlets and was more playful and whimsical than much of the 40s knitwear. It's now synonymous with nostalgic wartime style, and I think it's fascinating to see it knitted up in different colourways by the talented vintage knitters of today. Another iconic pattern, particularly popular in the United Kingdom, was the Seawaves jumper, a fun design created to look like the waves of the sea, which brought charm to the utilitarian style of the time. Simple patterns like ribbing or cables were common, as they were easy to knit and helped to make the most of an amount of wool. The Datemaker cardigan, another iconic style, became a symbol of resilience and optimism. It was popular because it was a versatile garment that was practical for day-to-day wear. The cardigan had a slightly cropped waist, emphasised by a belt. The pattern was designed to be an easy and quick knit. Women often chose to knit it in a sensible colour that would go with the other garments in their limited wardrobes. Then there is the iconic cardigan with a bow, which was particularly popular in the United States. This design had a touch of femininity with a bow at either the neckline or the waist. My mother knitted for me 2 cardigans with a bow at the neckline, with a pretty scalloped front and pattern on the back, one in raspberry red and the other in a dark green, kind of flecked with rainbow colours. So let's have a look.
you must remember this. A kiss is still a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo, they still say, I love you. On that you can rely.
I love this design as it allows me to show off a pretty blouse or dress underneath. I'm also busy making Yorkshire buttons in silk for the green cardigan. Unlike Dorset buttons, which are made by forming a base of buttonhole stitches around a brass ring, for my Yorkshire buttons I sent off for a kit. It was really cheap and you just weave the buttons around a template. You can see the result on my grey cardigan for the Yorkshire buttons. The influence of Hollywood stars on knitwear was also significant at this time. From the 1930s onwards, women looked to Hollywood for glamour. Joan Crawford, Betty Davis, Greta Garbo, Claudette Colbert and Carole Lombard, just name just some, wore knitted garments in their films. Joan Crawford especially wore many knitted cardigans in her films, while Betty Davis's elegant knitted garment tended to have soft romantic lines that inspired many of the knitwear trends, especially of the 30s. Carole Lombard, known for her light-hearted comedic glamour, often sported cosy knitwear in her role, helping to make these garments not only functional but a symbol of femininity. One such glamorous film-inspired knit was the Stardust cardigan, named after the 1940 film starring Linda Darnell and knitted by the talented Linda of Knitting for Victory. The original pattern suggested the sunny yellow for the main part of the cardigan, with a contrast yoke knitted in Angora. But Linda chose a soft faux fur to avoid, she says, for her, one long sneezing fest. Hollywood stars set many fashion trends, and actresses like Grace Kelly, Joan Crawford again, Betty Davis, Lauren Bacall and Rita Hayworth often wore twin sets on screen. The twin set was an incredibly versatile set of garments. It could be worn in different ways, both together or as separates, and paired with skirts, trousers or pants and dresses. This made twin sets an easy option for women who wanted to create multiple outfits from a single cohesive set. A twin set offered warmth without the heaviness of coats and jackets, making it ideal for transitional seasons. Many women were entering the workforce in the 1940s, and the twin set was an ideal option for women who needed to balance their professional and personal lives. The set was comfortable enough for work in offices and factories or other wartime roles, but could also be dressed up for social occasions. French fashion houses like Chanel and Vionnet also popularised the twin set. In the 1930s and 40s, there was a preference for matching coordinated outfits. Women favoured garments that came in sets or could be easily coordinated. A twin set fitted perfectly into this trend, offering a streamlined, polished look without too much effort. The style of the twin set followed the trends of the 30s and 40s. So this one, knitted in a gorgeous colour called Jelly Bean by Rowan Wells, knitted by my mother, has those slightly exaggerated shoulder lines of the 40s. And of course, women also knitted underwear in the 30s and 40s. The designs were simple, but knitted undergarments provided essential warmth during the wartime years, perhaps at the cost of a little itchiness. And of course there were also knitted bras too, because after all, wool has a good stretch to it, particularly like this pattern. Even scraps of wool were repurposed to create things like tea cozies, cushions, patchwork blankets, or of course the much valued during the wartime for pops of colour, accessories. Pixie hats were quite whimsical in the 1930s, with their soft slouchy shape and pointed tip. They might feature a gathered brim that could be worn up or draped down to add a playful vibe. These pixie hats were often paired with sporty looks or tea dresses. They're one of my favourites and fun accessories for creating a vintage look. Here I'm wearing a pixie hat knitted by myself and decorated with crocheted flowers. Adding details with crochet and embroidery to knitwear was very popular during this era. Berets also remained a staple in the 1930s and 1940s, becoming even more fashionable by the 1940s, partly influenced by military and wartime styles. They were typically made from knitted wool and could be worn tilted to one side to create a chic, continental style look. Knitted turbans were very popular in the 40s too, adding a touch of colour while keeping women's hair off their face as they worked. Pixie hats, berets and turbans were all common knitted accessories that could add a pop of colour and style to women's outfits while helping them stretch their wool supplies. Women also often knitted fingerless gloves or mittens. Ribbed knitting was a common technique used for gloves, providing stretch and fit. Even as rationing in the United Kingdom tightened, women found ways to keep on knitting, and their creativity in the face of hardship allowed them to maintain their style and individuality. Patterns from the rainbow or bunny ear jumper, the Seawaves jumper, and the Datemaker show how style can emerge from adversity, and how women throughout the 1930s and 40s shaped knitwear into both a fashion statement and a symbol of resilience. This is the true spirit of wartime fashion, and it's something we can all draw inspiration from today. I hope you've enjoyed this romp through knitwear fashions of the 30s and 40s. If you'd like to explore this fascinating subject further and get inspiration to knit your own vintage garments, you'll be pleased to hear that Linda of Knitting for Victory has a new book coming out in the next couple of months, and I shall definitely be buying a copy myself. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.
I give you a toast, ladies and gentlemen. I give you a toast, ladies and gentlemen. May this fair land we love so well in dignity and freedom dwell. The worlds may change and go awry, while there is still one voice to cry. There'll always be an England, while there's a country lane. Wherever there's a cottage small beside a field of grain, there'll always be an England, while there's a busy street. Wherever there's a turn